I feel like my mic cut out the last time, Justin, you were telling us that like AI was going to make it impossible for us to die. And I didn't get to yell at you properly and tell you that that's fucking insane.
I just told everybody right before we started that AI is going to make it impossible to die. Yeah. That's going to happen. That's happening now.
I do think, happening. I'm not so optimistic to think we're going to cure aging. I do think we're going to increase the runway by quite a lot and make the aging process a lot better. I mean, it's better now than it was, 40 years ago. It's better now than it was 60 years ago.
I still think that my meat suit that was going to give out at some point. I just don't see how like ChatGPT.
Yeah, but like on a vain level though, just vanity speaking here. Look at pictures of celebrities at age 50 today versus celebrities at age 50 in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Like the people now granted, part of it is because people in the 1960s fucking dressed like me, so they looked old. But independent of that, like sunblock wasn't a thing. So people just like, they wrinkled up a lot faster. And like heart disease, we've made basically like 2% increase for decades. Like it doesn't seem like it's crazy because it's so slow. But when you look at it overall, it's like, it's nuts. We've made all these dramatic reductions in things that used to knock people out.
No, they're like as soon as you turned 27 back in the day, you looked like Jack Palance. Like you just looked like a wrinkled old cowhand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also think women didn't do themselves favors with the short curly hairstyle that happened like the second you turned 30. Like now we have extensions. Like look at Kristi Noem. That's not her hair. So, but she looks young.
I kind of worry that my hairline's probably receded by a finger or two. It's fine. But like if it gets really bad, like I could go to Turkey for a week and get, there's stuff that really wasn't available years and years ago.
Yeah. Every male celebrity has like more hair than they had in their 20s now, which is insane.
But they still die.
Eventually.
we still die.
They die. But again, like I know it's trite to say it, but like your 60s is now functionally like being 45. Like in terms of your overall health, like it used to be a real luck of the draw if you made it past 60 in terms of what health you were going to be in. But like now, like, bad things happen and whatnot, but the odds of you having a health span that's much longer, not just a lifespan, but a health span within that overall lifespan is dramatically better than it's ever been historically. Like we're going to probably be the first generation that really gets like a prolonged healthy Act 3, whereas like it used to be like you kind of started winding down at a particular point. But we're going to get an extra 10 to 20 years of being in good health, mentally sharp, able to travel, all that kind of stuff.
And that's before 24/7 autonomous research and trials.
Yeah.
You giggle. You giggle, giggler. You giggle.
Jen,
all of the stuff about prolonging life makes sense, but like forever life, cuckoo bananas.
Forever and ever and ever. No, I can't fucking wait, dude. I can't wait to never die.
With all the computers, like with the sheer amount of computational power, like they're now doing research that would have taken years in the span of days just to go through all of the data. Like that's incredible. Like the speed at which we can make transformational changes, the speed at which we can figure things out is rapidly increasing, which means progress is going to happen faster. There might still be an endpoint to when you die, but all of the stuff in between then is happening faster and faster.
Well, I'll believe it more when you can cure the common cold because it keeps hitting me. And if you can't solve something that basic, I don't think living forever is in the cards.
Jen, on that note, to segue slightly, like I've had this conversation with a few people before where like I am a friendly agnostic, right? But I have lots of religious friends. They're like, how can you not look around the world and see the hand of someone planning? Can't, and I look and I'm like, this at best looks like the work of a committee to me. At best, like you can maybe convince me that there's a group, a pantheon of gods that includes somebody's nephew that got in there as a Nepo god that's in charge, like he's in charge of colds, and it's just not going very well. That seems more likely to me.
Well, based on the results last night, it's a non-binary god for James Tallarico, who dispatched Jasmine Crockett in the Democratic primary here in Texas. For the record, more Democrats voted in the primary than Republicans did, despite the fact that both had competitive primaries in the Lone Star state of Texas last night. That usually portends to the general election in terms of voter enthusiasm. So a very, very good night for the Democrats. They get the guy that they wanted and, enlisted Stephen Colbert to stab Jasmine Crockett in the back for. But also the Republicans are now going to be in a messy primary with Ken Paxton and John Cornyn, although Cornyn World, I was hearing rumors last night that Cornyn World was bracing for a 10-point loss against Ken Paxton. They barely finished in front of him, which may or may not be enough to coax an endorsement from Donald Trump that could essentially push him over the line there. But Cornyn Tallarico now looks more in play. Could be Paxton Tallarico. And if it's Paxton Tallarico, then Democrats are going to be salivating.
So I know that the runoff is in May.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? So just so people know, I'm in Texas. I voted yesterday. And when I walked in, I got to pick whether I had a Democratic or Republican ballot.
Yes.
In May, are we allowed to walk in and do the same thing? Like, are the Democrats allowed to walk in and just be like, I'll pick Ken Paxton?
You can pick your poison. Yeah.
The problem is that that's a deal with the devil. Because if we end up with a Senator Paxton, like that guy is a psycho. So it's like, I don't want to play stupid games,
and win stupid prizes. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think it would bode well for Tallarico because that guy is pretty hated in my experience in Texas.
Well, he already has 100 million plus in negative advertising that John Cornyn dumped on top of him. So he is a pretty well-defined candidate. And what you saw last night was that the oppo worked. It did keep people home. And so he is a flawed candidate. It really was like there was almost no good news for the Republicans, unless you hate Dan Crenshaw and Chip Roy, who both kind of got humiliated. Chip Roy for Attorney General and Dan Crenshaw for his House seat. If you were into them not being in elected politics,
did Crenshaw
anymore,
lose? Did he get primaried?
Yeah.
And Chip Roy as well?
Chip Roy out for Attorney General.
I do not
Texas. Now, he
consider
had already
these
left
good
the
things
House,
for the Republican Party. I think so like within the Republican spectrum, the people that were like, I could be friends with a Democrat and occasionally the Republicans are wrong. Like those guys are gone.
Not necessarily, because like if you look at the Cornyn Paxton situation,
Cornyn
the reason we're going to a runoff is that 13% of that vote went to Will Hurd and Wesley Hunt, sorry. But basically went to a guy who's not super MAGA. So they're going to be fighting over that 13% in the runoff and like whatever chaos the Democrats decide to put into it. But it wasn't necessarily like John Cornyn even being in the race. Like he was a guy that on January 6, 2021 was like, no, all of what Trump is doing right now is bad.
I'd say on a Texas Republican scale, Cornyn's on the good end, certainly on a different end than Paxton.
For the record, Wesley Hunt is very MAGA. Like all three were MAGA aligned. Cornyn was by far the most. He was in that situation because he's alienated part of his base. He alienated the MAGA part of his base that Paxton spoke to.
Who am I thinking of that was? Sorry, I just completely fucked up that analysis. I should just go back to bed.
No. Wesley Hunt is very MAGA. They are going to need his 13% probably decided that it was going to go to a runoff. There's a question of exactly who that 13% would benefit. Do you really believe that Paxton is just unwinnable? And even if you might agree with him more, are you more likely to hold your nose for Cornyn? Or are you just so anti-Cornyn that you're not going to vote for him, but you also don't like Ken Paxton because of his scandals? And so if you had to hold your nose, you would vote for the person that you more agree with, even if you think that he is more flawed. That's going to be the big question. None of them are good situations for the Republicans, including Texas 23, which we covered on this program before, and we're going to get to some questions about it. But that is the Tony Gonzalez, Brandon Herrera primary, which is also going to a runoff. Herrera over Gonzalez, 43-41. And there's like a 16-point swing between early votes and election day votes. That like election day votes were very Herrera. Early votes, as the news was filtering out about Gonzalez's scandals and text messages, were more in Gonzalez's favor, but not looking good for Gonzalez. But still, for the House right now, they now have a very uncomfortable 3 months where they're going to have to answer more questions about Tony Gonzalez and whether or not they're going to ask him to step down or if they're going to pull their endorsements. The House announced an ethics committee investigation today. Heaton?
So a dumb question here. When Jen said May, that is not the general election, that is the runoff election?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So if you didn't clear 50% in your Texas primary, you now go to a runoff with the top two.
Okay.
James Tallarico, benefiting from the fact that there was essentially two candidates in that race, got over 50%. And so now he is just cemented. We live in a Tallarico universe and everybody loves Tallarico, including Jasmine Crockett, who, to her credit, as a team player for the Democrats, came out and said, I'm looking forward to him winning in November. She also said to the New York Times that things need to be investigated or else black people won't show up in November. So the DNC is definitely going to clench their cheeks whenever she talks to anybody because
she's not wrong. Like, I don't think that she's calling, like, she conceded, and I think she was actually really cool about it, but she's right that there was some shenanigans in Dallas County because, like, when we went to vote, it was interesting to me that, like, I didn't have to go to a specific place. I could go anywhere I wanted to vote. In Dallas, it was different this time, and that wasn't communicated very well to people. So they were showing up to vote wherever was closest to them and told they had to go to a specific precinct. The Crockett campaign went to the courts and said, we want to extend the voting for people because they're going to be disenfranchised. And so the court said, we're going to keep this open until 9. And then that was challenged by Ken Paxton, which he's the attorney general. So that's all kind of ick. And then they said, like, we're going to shut down these polling places and we want you to set aside all of those ballots that came in after 7, which is really hard to do because the rule is if you're in line at 7, you're allowed to vote. So it's like, how do you even split that out? We don't even know. So Crockett is right that there was something dirty in Dallas and it should be investigated. And I don't think she's calling foul on the election. I think she's saying, like, this needs to be fixed by November. And she's absolutely right.
If she also had a better campaign, she would have been informing her Dallas County electorate, which she absolutely needed to win that race.
Fine,
and that is the larger.
She didn't make those rules. No, she did not make.
But she has to deal with the rules just like everybody else. Like whether or not that is a new thing that people have to deal with, then it's up to you to educate your electorate and get them to the polls to vote for you. That's part of the job of a good campaign.
It's still on the people that run the election to not change the rules like that and not have people like, I do think that it's important before November to make sure that people are aware of how to vote. And I don't think you can blame the Crockett campaign for this when this is something that's like, it's an election. It's the election runners.
I can, I am, and I will. Blame the Crockett camp. I mean, like they need to get their voters out. That's what happens. This is the end of this is what happens. You get people to the booth and you hit the button. That's a campaign. The
Crockett campaign does not control where people are allowed to vote. So you can have criticisms of the campaign, but she is correct that there was something different about this election and it caused problems, and the way that it was solved was all kinds of messy.
But this is my exact same problem that I had with Trump in the 2020 election, where it's like, oh, there was mail-in voting and there was this, that, and the other. Okay, if you got a problem with the way things are done, either A, file that lawsuit before election day, or B, tell people exactly how you need them to vote so you can maximize your opportunity to win. All this boo-hooing after the election when you lose is just loser shit.
I don't think that's what she's doing here. I really don't.
Yeah.
Because she even said last night, she was like, if it comes in and that votes are coming in from Dallas and it looks like I'm losing, then like we're just going to call that. But right now we can't say it because of this weirdness in Dallas. And then I woke up and she had already conceded the election. I don't think she's being a sore loser. I think she's genuinely worried that people will know where they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to vote in November. I think that those are totally fair.
I agree. All I'm saying from the Democratic perspective, the Democratic Party perspective, is they really want her talking about how elections are worthwhile to the black community, because the racial demographics of that primary last night was like the old Democratic Party in Texas. It was like whites versus blacks. There was
not a good look.
There was not a whole lot of mixing there. So it's like Crockett is somebody that's going to speak to an electorate. And if she is telling them that things aren't right, then you will dampen enthusiasm. And James Tallarico needs every black vote he can find.
And I think it's pretty likely that she's saying this now so that in November she can say we've made it right. That she's like what I watched last night and this morning, because I was worried about the same thing that you're talking about, that she was going to be a sore loser and come out swinging. And I don't see that from her. I think she's going to be a team player here. But I think that when she sees a majority black precinct or county with voting problems, I think she's right to call that out. And I think that if she is the person after calling that out who says, hey, everything's cool, this is what you got to do, I think it'll help in November, not hurt.
I will say that if she's talking about Republicans meddling in the primary, she is absolutely right. They tried to get her in and they tried to get her to win. They did everything they could to benefit her campaign. So they did meddle, but it was meddling trying to make her win, and they were unsuccessful in doing it.
Yeah. And I don't see her saying any conspiracies right now. So
we'll see.
We'll see.
Any other midterm thoughts or questions?
Can't come fast enough, man.
That's what she said.
Well played.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young. From her sick bay in Austin, Texas,
I'm Jen Briney.
And from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong. On this edition of the podcast, we will talk about Iran. The war that's not a war, that's also a war that is going great, but it might not be going fantastic, but it might be over, but it's probably going to last forever. We go through all of that. Also, a man with Tourette's screams the N-word at a movie awards show. We discuss all of that. Finally, the N-word is yelled at a British awards show, and we've have three white Americans to break it down for you. The only panel, just the Tallarico group, just getting together and hashing this one out. All that plus your emails. U.S. Central Command says that the United States has began Operation Epic Fury on Saturday night under presidential direction, launching a coordinated air and missile campaign against Iran that U.S. officials describe as aimed at dismantling Iran's security and strike apparatus. In briefings and official statements, the U.S. officials have described strikes against Iranian command and control, air defense networks, and ballistic missile and drone infrastructure, alongside other military facilities addressed as enabling imminent attacks. Multiple major outlets report that the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the joint U.S.-Israeli strike, an escalation that has intensified regional unrest and raised the risk of more retaliation. Since the opening strikes, Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks on U.S. and allied positions in the region. The U.S. threat assessments warn that Iranian-linked actors could expand retaliations, including in cyberspace. Last night, a U.S. base in Qatar was hit. CENTCOM's running updates indicate that U.S. deaths have now risen to 6 U.S. service members killed, with additional wounded. So far, markets have reacted as if this is more of an energy and shipping shock, with oil prices rising on fears of broader disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. So we're going to ask this. There's a lot of places to take this. And I was wondering how we're going to frame a conversation about it. So let me ask you this. Mr. Andrew Heaton, it is 1 year from today. What is the legacy of Operation Epic Fury in 2027?
There's 2 legacies that are going to come out of this. The first one is unknown, and it could go one of 2 ways, right? So not a fan of the Ayatollah, not a fan of the regime, would be very pleased with the outcome if what resulted from this was Iran embraces legitimate liberal democracy with individual rights, greater degrees of religious freedom, so on and so forth, and becomes good friends with America. That would be the best outcome, right? I will be pleased if that is the outcome from where we go. There's another outcome which is not good, which is where what we basically just did is open up the floodgates for civil war in Iran, which seems, and I don't know how it's going to go, but I could see it going either way. So the reason for that is there's not a clear oppositional institution that can just step in when the Ayatollah is gone. There is a democracy. I think the best case scenario right now would be that their parliament basically steps up and
becomes a real boy, as opposed to a wooden pretend of a democracy.
In which case, there would be a kind of institutional legitimacy there that would allow for transition and would hopefully keep the country from turning into a flat out military civil war, which is, I think, the big concern for Iran right now, because there's not it's not like there's a specific entity that goes, well, we're it now, like the vice president, like that. It's there's the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is like if the U.S. military also owned banks and construction companies and telecom. Like if the Navy was also Google. Like, imagine that entity. I don't think they're not very likely to go quietly. I think they're probably the strongest one there. So if somebody wants to come in and say, we're going to have liberal democracy and we're going to have a new institution, I think it's very possible there's just going to be massive civil war between them. I hope not. That will not be good for the Iranian people. I hope that this nudges them into a transition, but we don't really know how it's going to go. There's also the other thing too of like, I shed no tears for the Ayatollah Khamenei. I don't have any love lost for the guys that have been knocked out from the attacks that have occurred, but it doesn't always follow suit that when you get rid of the bad guy, that a good guy will automatically pop up. Another thing to consider is the Khamenei, who I do think was a legitimate theocratic nutball, had said there's a fatwa that prohibits Islam from using nuclear weapons. I don't think anybody in the Iranian National Guard believes that. Or excuse me, Iranian Revolutionary Guard believes that. So like whatever comes into the fore might want to have nuclear weapons, in part because they just got invaded. So like there's a possibility that happens. But again, there's a possibility that they transition and become a Hayekian capitalist liberal democracy that we're friends with. We're all rooting for that, but there's really no way to know what's going to happen. The legacy that I think is going to result from this either way is that the American constitutional order has been upended by this experience. The president declared war on Iraq without congressional authorization. And
you mean Iran?
Thank you, Iran. With Iraq, he did. It was a bad war. We shouldn't have done it. But President Bush spent months courting Congress to give him authorization of military force. This is a big deal. This is a major constitutional bright line that has been breached. We might be able to kind of mitigate the damage if Congress steps up and either declares its authority, stops the president from doing something, or I guess gives a fig leaf by retroactively allowing it and goes, you did it, but you with our blessing. But so far, the president did launch a invasion of a foreign power, and it wasn't constitutionally authorized, in my view. And that's a big deal and a departure from most American foreign policy. Like what we've typically done, and there are exceptions to this, but for the most part, what happens is we don't use the words declare war anymore, but Congress does authorize military use. And insofar as the president will do some kind of limited tactical thing, it's usually an immediate response to something that then Congress goes, all right, we're going to enable you to operate for X amount of time in this particular theater because of the thing that happened. This was a preemptive, proactive strike. And that really worries me because we don't want to have it where presidents can just declare war whenever they want. There's a reason that that's built into the Constitution. And I don't think that that's something that I think that legacy is now probably baked in regardless of the outcome of Iran. It'll be better if we were able to upend the constitutional order in order to get new liberal friends. But either way, I'm bothered by that.
So you are not swayed. The administration's argument is that they have 60 days with a 90-day extension of the War Powers Act where they do not have to seek congressional approval beyond consulting with the Gang of Eight and then keeping Congress abreast of that. You are not swayed by that argument.
No, I'm not. So to for people unfamiliar with the War Powers Act, the War Powers Act of 1973 that was originally instated to rein in Nixon and attempt to curtail presidential adventuring has never really been tried in court or accepted by any president. You find that when presidents do anything, they will report to Congress. There's been 110 reports of military action since 1973 where the president goes to Congress and says, this is what we're doing, or his proxies do it. So it is in effect, but you find that presidential language invariably says what we just did is in keeping with the War Powers Act, not pursuant to the War Powers Act. And I realize this sounds like lawyer ball, but what presidents always basically say is we don't even concede that Congress has the ability to do this. We are going to acknowledge that this is the wishes of Congress, and we are going to comport ourselves with the wishes of Congress voluntarily, but we don't actually think we need to do it. Under Article 2 of the presidency, we have the ability to do this. That's how all presidents think once they get into power. The read that you just gave me of the War Powers Act, I don't think is correct. My read of the War Powers Act is that Congress says if there is some sort of hostility that the president engages in, he has to report to Congress within 48 hours of doing that. And that's because Nixon was secretly bombing Cambodia. So in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, Congress had authorized President Johnson to have a war in Vietnam, a military use of authorization of military force in Vietnam. Nixon inherits that. And then when Congress repealed the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, Nixon went, well, that doesn't apply to me. I am the commander-in-chief of American troops. There are already troops over here, so it's not the ball's in my court. I can do whatever I want. And then it turned out on top of that he was bombing a country we'd never authorized. And his logic was, well, there's a lot of Viet Cong in Cambodia. I'm just bombing the Viet Cong that happened to be in Cambodia. It doesn't matter whether or not we were authorized to bomb Cambodia. So Congress went, all right, from now on, if there is some reason to bomb somebody, you have to let us know within 48 hours. You can't do it secretly. That's where the 48-hour thing comes from. The 2-month deadline is if we have been attacked, if there's a national emergency resulting from attacks on American territory or forces, the president has 60 days in which to execute military action until Congress otherwise extends that deadline. So if Iran had attacked us, the president would be authorized under the War Powers Act to go in guns blazing and do something for 60 days, at which point Congress would either have to declare war or he'd have to get his ball and go home. It doesn't say that the president can just declare war for up to 60 days, which seems to be what the Trump administration is saying. I am unaware of any evidence that's come out that we had been attacked by Iran. This was preemptive. This was proactive. The War Powers Resolution and the Constitution both do not authorize the president to engage in proactive military action for 60 days. It's just that when responding to an attack, the president has a 60-day degree of latitude, at which point the timer kicks in and Congress either says yay or nay.
Yeah, I guess the last time that Iran launched missiles before this was after the Midnight Hammer attack, when it seemed like it was a token thing that they were doing. But that was certainly more than 60 days before this attack.
We also have to keep in mind, though, that we never repealed the authorization for the use of military force that was passed after 9/11. It's one paragraph that really does authorize the president to bomb whoever he says is a terrorist. It's a terrible piece of legislation that's still haunting us to this day. And if they decide, like, I haven't heard what their legal justification is, because their responses to all questions about this have been nothing but chaotic. But that AUMF has caused millions of deaths around the world. And I wouldn't be surprised when they are actually asked for their legal justification if that's, I would be surprised if that's not in the conversation.
So point of clarification, I don't know the answer to this. That AUMF, was that, I thought that was specifically in conjunction to the 9/11 attacks. Is it in conjunction to the 9/11 attacks, or is it just terrorism anywhere in the Middle East?
I mean, it was supposed to be for 9/11, but it's been used to bomb Syria. It's been like, it's really been used, like you say the word terrorism, and they are tracing it back to the AUMF. And if there's no repercussions for doing so, than it does. Like, we can say like there's the letter of the law and then there's the realistic law. And the realistic law is the president has been able to do whatever the fuck he wants since World War II. That's the realistic, like Congress hasn't stepped up with any authorities that it says that it has. And so if the Congress has authorities and never uses them, do they actually exist?
And every party has been on every side of this issue. They have all kind of, done the carousel in defending or complaining about each side of this, that it's like, it's hard to get it's hard to get traction with an argument
although we are in a particularly low nadir of congressional neutering at this moment. So correct me if I'm wrong, but during the first Trump administration, Congress did execute 2 war powers resolutions regarding President Trump. When he assassinated the Iranian general, Congress effectively said no further. And Congress also stepped in and said, you are not to prosecute the Saudi war in Yemen or something to that effect. So even with Trump, Congress had stepped in and gone, this is the latitude that you're allowed to operate in. It did it with Obama when he bombed Libya. I mean, granted, it was a resolution, but there was political pushback of this is not congressionally authorized. But right now, no, we're not getting any of that. Although, at least as of Monday, Tim Kaine was saying there was going to be a vote for a war powers resolution.
There may well be. Yeah, there may well be a vote. I mean, we this is part of our sped up cycle where people are like, well, this is never going to happen. It's like, it has only been 3 business days since this war started on Saturday, despite the fact that it feels like 6 months because everything, every 15 minutes is a year in our cycle where everything's kind of forgotten. But let me frame it back to where we were initially. Jen, it's a year from today. What is the legacy of Operation Epic Fury?
I fear that the legacy of this is that I didn't think that the world was going to get out of a second Trump administration unscathed. And I think this is the hornet's nest that they have kicked that they were not prepared for. It's already expanded beyond Iran's borders. The Iranians have bombed a UK base in Cyprus, which means that they have bombed the European Union. NATO had to intercept missiles that were going over Turkey. And then today in international waters, we have used one of our submarines to take one of Iran's military ships to the bottom of the sea. So it's so far beyond Iran's borders. And I think that if you listen to the Trump administration, especially in the first 24 hours, because they keep changing their story, but I think the first 24 hours is what you really need to look to, like for history, to see what they were thinking of at the time. And they were thinking this was going to go a lot like Venezuela. I think their hubris, I think they went in there. We have a president who is not someone who reads, who understands things, who is all that, curious about the world. I don't think he understands the differences between Iran and Venezuela. He saw bad guy dictator in Venezuela. He was able to very easily, using the military, take that guy, kidnap him. The world didn't do shit. And then they were able to basically control the oil because we controlled the sanctions. And I think that they were using that as a model. And I think that because that's exactly what they said. But Iran is a very, very different thing. I mean, first of all, Iran can fight back, as we are seeing. And I think because Iran showed restraint during the operations last year, when it was really like a war with Israel, I think because those strikes were limited, I think they were expecting that again. They weren't expecting Iran to respond as heavily as they have, and especially attacking all of their neighbors in the way that they have. I also don't think that it feels crazy to me that I feel like I probably understand Iran better than the president of the United States. But with this president of the United States, I think I actually do. And I think their power structure is more decentralized than these people understand. The Ayatollah was obviously very powerful, but they also have the Revolutionary Guard, and those people are all over Iran. They're also outside of Iran. Like, they have people in Iraq, they have people in Yemen, they have people in Lebanon, like they have people all over the place. And one of the things
that's been part of the problem, yes.
Yes, absolutely. They're all over the place. And when you watch coverage from the Middle East, one of the concerns that the Arab countries have right now is that those proxies haven't even really been mobilized yet. Like, this is really just coming from Iran proper. They haven't even started using what they have there. So, Iran has responded so violently. And they're not just attacking military assets. They're attacking like a hotel in Dubai. They're attacking civilian infrastructure. They hit a refinery in Saudi Arabia. Like, they are not fucking around. And I don't think that the Trump administration expected that. And I also don't think that the Trump administration really took in the religious zealotry into account, because the Ayatollah is not like, it's not just a political leader. We're talking about a religious cleric. We're talking about one of the most important people in the Shia Muslim world. And this is something that could wake up an uprising, not just within Iran, but in Shias in general. And they are not just in Iran. In fact, we saw it in Pakistan already. There was a bunch of Pakistanis that stormed our embassy already. So this is moving beyond Iran, beyond the Middle East. It's now Europe and now Asian waters, international waters. Now that we have opened the door to attacking ships in international waters, are our ships in danger in international waters? Like, this is already spreading so far beyond what the Trump administration, I think, was prepared for. I also think it speaks volumes that the Trump administration had no plan whatsoever for getting Americans out of the Middle East. Like, the Europeans are chartering planes to get Europeans out of the Middle East. We are telling our people to leave the Middle East, but then going, hey guys, you're just gonna have to find a commercial flight, even though all the airports are closed. Like, they are being caught so off guard with this response that I think this is gonna be the hornet's nest that's gonna define the Trump administration as the chaotic, dim-witted, reckless people that we were afraid that they are. This is it. This is their legacy. And I think that a year from now, we're going to be talking about enormous amounts of casualties. There's already been 1,000 Iranians who have died. And I know that, you know, there are Iranians that are understandably excited that the Ayatollah is gone, because by all accounts, he was incredibly violent. I mean, just this year killed tens of thousands of Iranians who were protesting.
30,000,
Yeah. And so there's this hope that Donald Trump himself has said that the Iranians are going to rise up and like help us with the regime change. But while in the process of doing something that we say is helping them, we have bombed a school with 165-ish little girls who were killed and their teachers. We've also bombed at least 9 hospitals, one of them a children's hospital. And there is no good faith that we are given by the world that these are accidents because of what Israel, our partner in all this, did in Gaza. So it's really hard, I think, if I put myself in the shoes of an Iranian who might want to help with the regime change, am I going to hit the streets and try and help the people that are destroying my civilian infrastructure, that have killed our little children, that are bombing our hospitals? Like, there's no good guys here. And so 5 days into this, we're not seeing this uprising by the people. And so, Andrew, I think you kind of mentioned it already, that civil war in Iran is on the table. I think it absolutely is. I think that is the most likely scenario. I think the idea that we're going to come out of this with some pro-US government is damn near impossible. Had we kept our strikes, had we kept Israel's strikes also to just military targets, because we always talk about how, you know, we're great with precision, and yet we hit that fucking school, and yet we hit those hospitals. Had we made sure that it was only military targets, maybe that would have been the case, but we are hurting people in Iran. And so not only do I think that there's going to be an enormous amount of blood shed in the Middle East because of this, but I also think that we are going to get hit too. I think blowback is going to happen. In fact, it already fucking did. Saturday night, walking distance from my house, we already got our first person wearing an Iranian flag under his sweatshirt that opened fire here in Austin, Texas. I do not think that's going to be the last time. I think that we are going to suffer. We've already had 6 of our service members, although I do think we're being lied to about the number of service members that we've lost. If you look at the satellite pictures of our bases in Kuwait, I think they're lying to us. So yeah, I think that this is going to be an absolute disaster. And and this will be the legacy. I think the legacy is going to be, we made a huge mistake by letting Trump come back into power. I see all bad.
Yeah, like, so, you know, I've spoken to a couple of friends about this. There are some good reasons to intervene in Iran, and I share your criticism, Jen. If it were to result in the collapse of the Ayatollah's regime and something better came, that would be good. If we could just put our thumb on the scales and push it that direction, and that were the outcome, there are good reasons to like that. My default state is, when in doubt, don't bomb another country. If you're not sure, don't bomb them. And I have misgiving. I have pros and cons to going into Iran. I'm probably more hawkish than you, Jen. But because I have some doubts, I'm like, when in doubt, don't bomb. And one of the few things, we've talked about this, one of the few things that I liked about Trump was that he was a non-interventionist. Like, I never voted for Trump, but I was like, you know what? I got him. The first term, I was like, that guy's insane. He says he's a non-interventionist. Why believe it? I freaked the fuck out when he assassinated the Iranian general. I thought that was going to result in war. Yep, it didn't happen. And I ate my words, and I was like, you know what? It turns out I was wrong. It turns out he actually is an isolationist. He's relatively restrained on a presidential scale. We're not getting into. He's trying to strike a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia rather than escalating a proxy war. He's holding back. Turns out I was right the first time. Like, he is an interventionist. For a non-interventionist, he's sure bombing a lot of countries. Like, he's sure like going in and removing heads of state from a lot of different countries for a non-interventionist. And I would love
he's
for them.
getting played. There's also the idea that he's getting played by Netanyahu, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham. Like, Marco Rubio being put in this regime as Secretary of State was always a red flag for me, because that guy has never seen a country that he's not down for bombing. So I do also think that our president's an idiot and he's easily manipulated. And I'm wondering if that is a part of this, because you are so right, Andrew, that he changed all of his tunes from the first administration to the campaign to now. This is a different thing. But if you look at who he's surrounded by and who he's listening to, I think they're manipulating him behind the scenes. Because I remember at the RNC, he was being told that the Iranians wanted to assassinate him. And I still don't know to this day if that was real, but this could also be personal. That was Biden's FBI
that said that.
Okay, but that also speaks to, like, it's always all about Trump, right? And so I feel like this could be personal. And also, Trump is kind of getting a lot of money from the people that want Iran bombed. Like, his son-in-law has a $2 billion deal with the Saudis, and God knows that the Adelsons have given who really, they're Israeli people.
Singular these days.
Yeah, Miriam.
For a minute.
But she gave him $250 million for his campaign and, like, has always wanted to bomb Iran. So it's like, when you look at the Trump of it all, I do
Talarico
think
donor too.
Okay. But I think that I think that what we're seeing, the difference in Trump, could be because of the people he has surrounded himself with in this administration are so different from the people in the first administration.
I think part of this just comes from the fact that there's not a coherent underlying ideology here. Yeah. So when I was on Tim Pool's show last week before, whenever the fuck that was, in an effort to have a good faith conversation with him and quit fighting, at one point, like, he was like, do you think we should go bomb Iran? Because Tim thinks that I am the embodiment of all neoliberal people. So I was like, no, I don't think we should go into Iran. I think it's a bad idea. And I think we were on the same page on that. And I was like, hey, like, help me understand this. It seemed to me that a very good argument that the libertarians made, so the libertarians were divided on Trump in 2016, but the good argument was, we know Hillary's a war hawk. Trump does not seem to be a war hawk. Yes, he's an asshole, but you're either going to get a guaranteed war hawk or an asshole that's not a war hawk. That, like, that had some traction. And I was like, with Venezuela and possibly going into Iran, there doesn't seem to be a default non-interventionist stance. Like, what, like, is he a realist? Like, what is his thing? And Tim said, it's about America first. The difference between him and Biden is that he's prioritizing America. And I was like, okay, well, now we're just talking about intentions. Like, everybody thinks they're doing the right thing for America. But I don't think that there's actually like a cohesive worldview there of this is what we should be doing. It's all gut. And that means that it's erratic because there's not a through line going, oh, well, we're realists. We believe in great powers and all that. We're international liberals or whatever. That's not there. So it's going to be erratic.
I think it feels chaotic because it is. And I think that's probably the scariest part, is that I don't think that these people are playing 4D chess. I don't think there's a master plan here. I think they did it because they could. I think they did it because, and I do believe that what Marco Rubio said in his first press conference was probably more accurate, which is that when they talk about an imminent threat from Iran, the threat was that Israel was about to bomb Iran, and that in the blowback from that, they were expecting us to get hit. And so they were going to, hit them first. I do think that that is a part of it. I think Israel pulled us into this. Netanyahu said as much. He was like, I've been trying to get this for 40 years, but he got, this idiot to do it for him. But I think that from here on forward, it's going to feel very chaotic because there is no plan. And that is what terrifies me the most.
Allow me to offer the plan. So this is, look, salt to taste. I agree with all of you to say that I don't know how much we really know. I think that there's a lot one of my least favorite parts of this version of the Trump administration is open deception for the sake of surprise or information management. This is a very information management obsessed administration, which when things are going well, you can say, look at him, he's so smart. But this is like, when it goes poorly, you're like, wait a minute, was anybody planning about this? And you find out that it's Kristi Noem, who's more focused on booking commercials for herself and fucking her boyfriend in a $70 million plane with a lover's suite in the back. That being said, there's a few things that I do think are kind of getting lost in this discussion. Number one, we are in a new era for the Gulf states. And I think that you can largely see this on some level as an outgrowth of the Abraham Accords, which began under Trump 1, continued under Biden, which...
Will you just summarize really quick what those are? I don't think that's a common...
The Abraham Accords were essentially the negotiated point of view that as the Gulf region was evolving, they would normalize relations largely with Israel, because that's where a lot of the Arab states were very hostile to. But in a world where Saudi Arabia is more interested in hosting WrestleMania than waging jihad, there's money to be made on all of these fronts. And so Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, you will all begin to normalize relations up to the point that, this is according to the Biden State Department, October 7th happened because Iran was terrified that Saudi Arabia was close to normalizing their relationship with Israel, if not signing on to the Abraham Accords, essentially tightening a noose for every major power in that region except for Iran, allying all of them with the opposition being to Iran. Now, what has happened since October 7th, obviously, is well documented, but three things are for sure. Three phases have happened, the likes of which we have not seen since the Islamic Revolution. Number one, Iran, without question, is weaker than it has ever been. It's all of its regional allies, which it has used as leverage against its neighbors in the region. Like you pointed out, Jen, these IRGC generals are all over the place because they're in many ways have been influencing and directing these regional proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, yada, yada, yada. Syria fell because Russia's weak, because Russia went into Ukraine and what they thought was going to be a quick 15-minute adventure. 4 years later, they're still sending men to die. A question about exactly how short we think this particular epic fury, maybe we should look to Russia and think sometimes these things last longer than we think they're going to. China, meanwhile, which is in its process of trying to step up its military might for a Taiwan invasion, which they say is going to happen by next year. They need to be ready for it by next year, literally just purged their top military people. So the argument is, when you have Russia weak, Iran weak, China weak, these are the three phases that would keep Iran. They all have a vested interest in Iran's remaining as a bulwark against Western powers or more Western aligning powers in the region. They are also a massive supply of gas and oil to China. If all of these things are happening right now, that will not stay the same way forever. And regional powers, yes, Israel, but also, I forget who reported this, that Saudi Arabia was pushing just as hard as Israel for this to happen. Iran obviously didn't believe that any of these Gulf states were going to stay neutral, which is why they led their attacks by hitting the territory of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, blah, blah, blah. Not only the American installations, but also, as Jen pointed out, civilian installations. So they believed that this was a regional push. that the question is now, was this going to always be a regional war? And can it end faster if the United States is involved? That would be the kind of 4D version of this. To the frustration about the messaging on it, I agree. And again, that's like, there was reporting that came out today or yesterday from Axios that like, we knew that we were going to bomb Iran on Monday. The State of the Union was Tuesday. Donald Trump intentionally said only 3 lines about Iran because he didn't want to tip off the Ayatollah and all the leadership, because then they were worried that they wouldn't all meet above ground like they knew they were going to on Saturday. And so therefore,
which by the way, they need to get into Zoom. Like I gotta say, like they really need to get into Zoom. Like we know that they've been infiltrated the fuck out of themselves by Mossad, and like if I were them, I'd be like bunker protocol. Everybody go to basement.
Some of that shit, like I don't know what's a psyop and what's real with the rumors that are coming out of exactly how infiltrated the IRGC and the leadership of Iran was by Mossad, but there were rumors that high-end doctors and dentists were implanting trackers during surgery into IRGC officials. And so that's how they knew where everybody was. More realistically, apparently the traffic cameras were all hacked and they were able to track everybody's movements in Iran because they knew where everybody was at any given time. There is not a lot to suggest that that's not the case when they are able to find every secret meeting that happens and bomb them within seconds of the meeting happening. But to remove it back, like that would be the plan beyond just the herky-jerky, helter-skelter. I am the most bigly Ayatollah now. I will take everybody out. This is going to be very easy. That would be the argument. Now, as for my prediction as to what we will see from a year from now, since we have a kind of mixed version from Heaton and a very apocalyptic version from Jen, I will say it's not even a fucking news story by July 4th, and we have certainly forgotten all about it by the time that we are here a year from now. And this would be the case for that. While everything does seem like it's a year, that every day is a year, we are 4 days into this right now. We have essentially attrited a lot of the missile launching technology. The stuff that Jen, you're talking about, were either things that were launched in the first few minutes that much of it has since been destroyed. Iran has mostly been able to do damage now by way of drones. And the top line of who is telling who to fire what where is gone. So now you are going to essentially move into a phase, or in the optimistic version, you would move into a phase where either a leader of the Revolutionary Guard or somebody that is in the command structure would be your point person to be able to deal with things. It's a little bit more of a Venezuela situation where, all right, somebody who also runs an oil refinery, or as Andrew pointed out, the telecom, because an Iranian listener tipped me off to the Boyad structure. That is what Heaton is talking about, where you are a military general, but you also run essentially a state-sanctioned business. That a combination of people like that are probably more sympathetic to the West than we realize now would be in place. All of the Gulf neighbors are there to police things in a way that the United States doesn't have to be there in the way that we had to be in the 2000s, largely because Iran was the one causing trouble before. And this is something that is calm. This is something that is just a bigger version of so many Trump situations, things that seem dark and impossible and beyond controllability, that for whatever reason just kind of dissipates and wafts into the night. And we're all arguing about something else he said or posted on Truth Social.
So I hope you're right about this, but I think one possible flaw in your analysis is when you look at the weakness of all the other countries, we're not taking into account our own military weakness, that having watched so many military-related hearings in the past few years. I think I might be more privy to than others, because what the military has been saying, like let's rewind to the Biden administration, the start of the Ukraine war. What we have been doing is emptying our stockpiles of weapons and funneling them first to Ukraine and then to Israel. And so what the military commanders have been coming in to Congress and saying in these hearings no one attends is we are depleting our own stockpiles much faster than we can replenish them.
Yeah.
And so now we're not only using our stockpiles still for Ukraine and Israel, but we're also sending them to Qatar and the UAE and Saudi, and like we're spreading them around, and we are going to run out. We are not as strong as we think we are. These are not unlimited weapons. And then you also brought up something that I think is very important, that one of the main weapons that Iran has started using, they are much more versatile, are drones. And so you can get these drones, which, they're relatively small, but they can take out a hotel. We saw them do it. They can take out an apartment complex. They can take out, I believe it was one drone that did major damage to the Saudi oil refinery. These drones cost like maybe 50 grand-ish.
Yeah.
We shoot them down with THAAD missiles, which are like 1 to 2 million per missile. And so it's like there is this mismatch in finances and what we have available because of what's been going on the last four years. Like, we're weak too. And so if the entire plan here is that we are the strongest and no one can beat us, I don't think that's true. So I think that's a hole in the plan.
Well, here, to that point, and this is where I have two dark notes to strike with this. One, politically, on the Donald Trump front. Look, there's about 10% of that coalition, his MAGA coalition, his do or die, love him, wear the red hat until, play YMCA at my funeral kind of types that are fucking out. They're the Marjorie Taylor Greene types, and they are fucking poisoned by shit like this. They feel betrayed by it. They feel that this is exactly the opposite. You can see it in monologues by Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson. They really took the anti-interventionalist stuff seriously, and they are out right now. If this goes beyond a month, if this goes beyond 2 months, if this stretches into the summer and we're still talking about it, God forbid if we're talking about putting more people on the ground or putting boots on the ground or shipping stuff to the region, now you're going to lose more of it, right? So for Donald Trump's coalition, I do think this is poison. That is on that side. Here's the global part. I don't think this is World War III, but I think it might be a preseason game. I think that this is us matching up against Chinese anti-air technology, Russian drones, the exact kind of thing that we would be looking at in a war with China. This, and for the record, another reason, that two things that I think are not being talked about when we talk about stuff like this. Number one, the eagerness of the other Gulf states to get Iran off the fucking board because they're the reason why they can't make money. And two, China. We are not talking about China. The American government is not talking about China because they don't want to frame this in a way that I think they're thinking about it in the Pentagon, which is, and I forget where this came from yesterday, after Operation Midnight Hammer, where we took out a lot of the Iranian abilities to enrich uranium, China started sending missiles at an incredibly elevated rate to the point where the other Gulf neighbors were like, look, if there is a math point, to your point, Jen, where we're not going to be able to create interceptors at the rate that they can shoot missiles. And so if the Iron Dome and stuff like that, we're just going to be in a math version where if it doesn't happen soon, if it doesn't happen now, then we're going to be on the other side of that math equation and we're never going to be able to hit their missile infrastructure to launch it. And so that's what's happened over the last 3 days. But to your point, either where our military is by the end of it or the fact that we just showed some of our plays. We just showed what we're going to do. Now China knows that. Now China knows what that even if part of the commentary of the military side of this is that China's air defense stuff kind of sucks. It's kind of a Temu version of a good version of it that America makes. Still, That's data for them. They now know it. And all they had to do was watch a lot of Iranians die. They don't give a shit. They're fine. I mean, like Xi came out yesterday and said that we are offering moral support for the Iranians, even though we think that this is an illegal attack by America. But yeah, their weapons are involved.
But the plot thickened this morning because the Chinese are pissed that the Iranians have shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So this is where I become Jenny optimistic, because the Iranians might be overplaying their hands, because if they continue to bomb their neighbors, the neighbors might bomb back. And if they keep the Strait of Hormuz shut down, if they accidentally, I mean, they said that they're going to set any ship that enters the strait on fire.
Yeah.
If they do that to a Russian ship, if they do that to a Chinese ship, and the Chinese have said, we are very oil dependent. Like, we don't like that, but like, we are oil dependent, and this is going to hurt us a lot. So if that Strait of Hormuz stays shut down, that makes China angry at Iran. So Iran, they're playing a dangerous game as well.
Their regime is toast. Their regime is over. Now, whether or not there is a different version of it, or it says it's the same thing, or it's a collection of IRGC generals, who knows exactly what does that. Count me as not being part of the Fooled Again Awards ceremony on saying that we're going to arm the Kurds. I've been hearing about the arming of the fucking Kurds since I was 9. Enough. I love the Kurdish people. Salute to all of you. You are a very persecuted minority that nobody fucking knows about, but you're not overthrowing Iran and you're not setting up Kurdistan. You're going to continue to get the shit kicked out of you. And I'm very sorry, but you're not taking over fucking Tehran. To your point, Jen, part of this is an oil play. You know, if you look at what's happened just in the year 2026, we took out Venezuela, which is about 4% of China's oil. I did the math on this. China uses 14 million barrels of oil a day. 4 million they produce domestically. 10 million they get from other sources. 4% of it was Venezuela. I've seen various people say different numbers on Iran. I'm going to settle on 14%. Some people have said it's up to 20 or 27 or something like that. But also another 10 to 15% is from Iraq. Both of those use the Strait of Hormuz to get to China. So if that is shut down, that is Iran saying, this is the death rattle of the regime. We would rather kill ourselves than make a deal with anybody. And so they're going to die. Like, that's just, when you have that many regional powers that are going to squeeze you, you're eventually going to get squeezed out. But if we do that and you're looking toward China, and this goes back to the preseason game thing, then you're essentially saying, all right, China, we have just taken, squint in its 20% of your daily oil supply. What now? Can you wage the war you thought you would be able to wage to blockade Taiwan? Because they don't have nuclear battleships. We have nuclear battleships and submarines that can stay out for as long as they need to because they're self-powered, essentially. They don't. They need oil. They especially need oil if they are in a war footing. Because I don't care how many hills you cover with solar panels, you can't run a cable that far into the ocean.
Yeah. I think the conclusion is we have no fucking idea what's about to happen.
Nobody knows. It's provocative.
So Justin, you do think that the best prediction money is we won't even be thinking about this by July?
I wanted to represent a different side of it. It would not shock me if that's the case. I will say I am startled as somebody who came of age in the 2000s at the very least how effectively we can capture and kill heads of state that I thought were uncapture and unkillable for most of my adult life, considering I lived through the war on terror where we had to chase Mullah Omar through the desert of fucking Afghanistan for 3 months. And then we spent another 6 months looking for Saddam Hussein in fucking
spider
holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it has been interesting that it is easier to capture and kill these people than I was led to believe. Now, does that mean that Iran is a settleable land? No, I don't think so, because it's not Venezuela. It's not a situation where it was such a kleptocracy in Venezuela that you could just go to the assistant to the chief torturer and say, hey, if we kick out the Cubans and we kick out the Chinese, do you want to deal with us and make money? And she's like, see. And then we just kind of keep going. And, we have Exxon doing a tour of their refineries like 3 weeks later. That was a lot easier than Iran. Iran is and largely because Venezuela's been fucked up for less time than Iran. Iran's been a fucking brutal theocracy since the 70s, since all of us were born. So like, it is a different world. There is a tremendous diaspora. Maybe they are able to, kind of rebuild things, but whoever leads there now, we don't know. We have no idea. And is it going to be as bad as the Khamenei's? I don't know. I mean, I don't suspect, maybe, but who knows?
Hey, Justin, did I tell you that I went to an event at the Saudi embassy about 3 weeks ago? Did I mention this?
No.
Yeah. I got invited to an event. It was just like a cultural event. So I went to the Saudi embassy. I think they're the ones that most benefit from this. I think you've already alluded to that, but like Saudi Arabia is thrilled with all of this because they're now the regional hegemon. It was really a funny event for one specific reason. The guy that was the primary diplomatic touch point for the group is a Saudi citizen who is a member of their diplomatic corps. He is Saudi Arabian, but his dad was a Saudi ambassador, so he grew up entirely in the Lower East Side of New York City and has only lived in Saudi Arabia for 5 years in his 20s, and I fucking love that guy. He'd come up and be like, yeah, my family's from Jeddah, but we do the Hajj, so we've got cousins and stuff in Mecca. It's actually a very diverse country. A lot of people, they do the Hajj. They come from Indonesia, then they just settle there. That's fine. It was really funny. Get on a high note.
Great.
I got his number. I want to hang out with that dude, Bob from Saudi Arabia.
Look, Mohammed bin Salman is a generational figure in the Middle East. That's another huge part about this is, that he wanted to take the country in a different direction. I think it's going in a different direction. The larger part of this is, somebody wrote this week that Donald Trump buried the 20th century. And I think that there's some truth to that. We'll find out if he gets, his new gem in his gauntlet of destroying foreign policy mistakes of the last century if Cuba topples. But you're looking at a lot of things that have just been thought to be permanent in the world that are now in flux. Venezuela being the medium version, but the heavy version is Iran. Iran defined the Middle East. The Ayatollah, the Islamic Revolution of Iran defined the Middle East for all of our lives, for multiple generations. And now we don't know what comes next. Is it going to be the same thing? Maybe. But we have no idea what comes next there. And we have a different version of the Gulf than existed in the 70s when the last Islamic Revolution happened.
There is one more factor that we haven't discussed. Speaking of what comes next, because there is a not insignificant faction in the Trump administration that thinks what comes next is a giant war in the Middle East where the war could be the point. And what comes next is the return of Jesus. I do think that we need to take into account that we have some religious whack jobs in charge right now. There's already been whistleblower reports that there's commanders in our military that are talking about the return of Jesus to their soldiers. We know that Mike Huckabee is one of these people. He's our ambassador to Israel. So I do think that we need to question whether the war itself is the goal for some of these people in our government.
I will say that if we could quantify evangelical belief that it is only in a war in the Middle East that will bring back the second coming of Jesus Christ, which will sort through in the rapture the believers from the non-believers, which is what you're referencing. If we were to quantify that and it could be a liquid and we could wring everybody in a decision-making capacity out, I would say we would have had more of that with the Bush administration than we had with this
That's
administration.
probably true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
Now, considering how long that administration took to find Mullah Omar and how effectively we were able to kidnap Maduro and put a missile on top of fucking Khamenei's head, maybe this administration's just better at it, and therefore it takes less belief to do things like this. But I would say that administration, the Bush administration, was more evangelically driven than this one, where our president repeatedly says, I don't believe I'm going to heaven.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our president, here's the problem. Our president is so manipulatable that I don't think it really matters what he believes, because someone who does believe that the war needs to happen to bring Jesus back can just say whatever he thinks Trump wants to hear and like get it to happen. I do think right now he's listening a lot to Marco Rubio, who's much more into the geopolitics of it all than he is the religious aspect. So it's like, I don't think this is the number one factor. But with like Mike Huckabee, it is. Like, that guy is all into it. So it's like, I do think that it is in the room. And I think it needs to at least be considered when we talk about this, that this isn't just a battle between countries. There are people in our government that are doing this for religious reasons, that they think they're bringing forth a prophecy that's going to bring their savior back. And even though that's insane, like, that's in the White House right now. And I think we need to be aware
Mike Huckabee isn't in the White House. Mike Huckabee is in Jerusalem.
He's in, but like, I mean, like, his presence, his opinion, like, he's in the conversations, like, and he's not the only one. I think Hegseth might be one of them. We know we have some of these people in the military. That's what we're hearing right now.
It's a bunch of Catholics. The Catholics don't believe that. It's the evangelicals that believe that.
Yes, but I'm saying, and it is accurate, that there are people in the Trump administration for whom a major war in the Middle East needs to happen to bring Jesus back. And we should be aware that, like, we're fighting against a theocracy in Iran, and we have theocratic wackadoodleness in our own government right now too.
Yeah. Noted. It is noted.
Yeah, that's all I really wanted to do, was note it.
We're noting it.
Excellent.
Boop. Noted. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this show. We're going to talk. Oh, geez. This is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about, speaking of the Pentagon, a battle between Anthropic, the AI company, and the Pentagon. That will be in our Patreon bonus episode. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of me. It's an AI topic, so it'll be a lot of me talking and Jen rolling her eyes. But it involves.
And you've got the Pentagon, and you've got a big corporation. There's something for everybody here.
Yeah, there's something here. Anyway, Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. At the 2026 BAFTA Film Awards in London, often seen as the beginning of movie award season, controversy erupted when a guest with Tourette syndrome attending as the subject of the film I Swear involuntarily shouted the N-word while stars of the movie Sinners, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, were presenting on stage. The moment aired despite the BBC broadcast delay meant to catch offensive language, prompting apologies from BAFTA and the network and sparking debates about disability, intent, and live broadcast standards. The incident resurfaced days later at the 2026 NAACP Image Awards, where host Dion Cole referenced it during his opening monologue, keeping the BAFTA moment part of the weekend's award season conversation. And as we move into the Golden Globes and eventually the Oscars, you would suspect that it will continue, as Sinners and its director and stars will be up on stage a lot because they're nominated for a lot. Heaton. A Tourette's advocate said the N-word. Wait, no, I gave Heaton the first one. Jen. A Tourette's advocate said the N-word to famous black people on stage in a moment of glory. Who's to blame?
I blame BAFTA 100% because the attendee, first of all, the reason he was there is because there was a documentary about him.
Tourette's.
The title of which is I Swear, because his specific version of Tourette's causes him to say offensive things. And it, like, the documentary is about how hard it is in his life and how embarrassing it is and how he doesn't actually believe the things that comes out of his mouth. It's actually very sad. And so, they invited him to be an attendee because that documentary was in the running for awards. And so they did do a warning in the beginning to the crowd and said, you might hear some noises, but they didn't specifically say, from what I understand, these noises might be the N-word, the
Slurs.
F-word.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a proper warning, but they allowed this guy to be in the crowd. And then he did exactly what he's in the documentary doing. And the other problem is that the hosts were not prepared for that. So here they see this white guy yelling the N-word at two black guys on the stage. That must have been really hard for them. And what BAFTA did was just kind of expect the speakers to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember his name, but then someone came on the stage, famous guy came on the stage and then apologized to anyone who was offended. Now, the way this should have been handled is that what I think they should have done is in the beginning told the crowd specifically what you might hear and tell the crowd we're just going to disregard all of it because this is a part of his disease. It's what the documentary is about. Apparently everyone stood up and clapped in the beginning. And I think if they had understood the nature of this specific person's Tourette's, they would have heard it, maybe like, winced a little at their neighbor and then moved on. But because the speakers were unprepared, because the attendees were unprepared, and because the people that were airing this didn't bleep it, then it became a bigger thing because they could have taken that delay. I think the standard delay in live broadcasts is about 7 seconds. Make it 15. There's ways to deal with this. And
you could have caught it in 7. I'm telling you. You watched the clip. You could have got it in 7.
And it was actually like all three of us are editors here. Like it was an easy cut. You didn't even have to cut any of the speakers on the stage.
Just mute
listeners,
it
I edit
deal with
Jen's
it on the re-edit.
podcast regularly, and I am very quick to knock out the N-word on that one. I'm very good whenever I do Jen's work to make sure that's not in there.
Thank you for your service. I think that BAFTA severely mishandled this and did so in a way that further humiliated someone who was meant to be in that room to be honored. Yeah. So I hope that this isn't true, but in a way it makes me wonder if these BAFTA people wanted a controversy so that we know, Andrew's very excited I'm saying this, because what's BAFTA? I watched the Golden Globes, I watched the Emmys, I watched the Oscars. What the fuck is BAFTA? But this is the first time in my life we're talking about it because something viral happened at it. So I hope that's not true, but a part of me thinks that that man might have been put in there as a prop. And so that's why I put this on them 100%. And it actually makes me pretty mad.
Oh, Cinephiles Look Down doesn't know what BAFTA is. Shocking Philistine commentary by Jen Briney. Mr. Andrew Heaton, who's to blame?
Yeah, BAFTA. I think the debate is exactly what Jen brought up, which is did they do this on purpose or not? That's the debate.
Is it really? Because I thought I was a little tinfoil hat about it.
No, okay. Let me start with that. Producers and PR people are sociopaths. There are some exceptions to this. There's a guy named Jason Voyevich. He's a friend of mine. Jason, if you're listening, I'm not talking about you. You're a stellar dude. Most PR people, I'm glad they went into PR because as sociopaths, I'd rather they go into that benign field than something else. But I say this because I'm inundated every single day with 15 emails that begin with, hey, Andrew, really like the podcast. Make some good points. Have you thought about having on my guy to talk about why dough sells better and promote his book about dough?
Oh, my God. Because the AI versions of those are so terrible because they kind of trick you initially because they scrape your last episode and they're like, great last episode about blank. Yep. I really thought your points about blank were great. Anyway, dough is on the rise and we need you. Yeah.
Yep, exactly that. And this has been going on since I started this. And you can see they don't even use the same font because they copy and paste it. And this is my bone to pick. If your very first interaction with me is lying to my face, fuck you, you're a sociopath. That's how that works. You can say I'm a PR guy for this guy who's selling books on dough, and I would love for him to come on your program. That's fine. I'm probably not going to bring him on, but at least you're not lying, right? Also, having worked in media for a while, there are a lot of producers where they're like, my job is to get eyeballs. My job is to get eyeballs. My job, it's other people's business to figure out what the ins and outs of this. I mean, the sorts of people that run reality television are the exact kind of people that would be torturing John McCain in a cell in Vietnam back in the 70s if they'd been in a little bit different thing. Like there's some bad people that are in the producing end of this. So like, did they go, oh, if he shouts the N-word, we're going to get a lot of free attention? Would not surprise me in the slightest if somebody had that. I don't think that's tinfoil hat. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe BAFTA is a higher standard than the low level, we could ruin people's lives for sport and make money off of it producers that we have in reality television in the United States, but it wouldn't overwhelm surprise me. I think your point at the beginning, Jen, of they could have done a better job of bracing everybody for it makes sense. And I also am very glad that everybody here is sympathetic to the guy that has Tourette's. He didn't pick that. It's not something that he's willfully doing. He's not doing it for attention. I can't fathom how incredibly socially isolating that must be. I know a couple people that have minor Tourette's. I think you guys know them too. And they're able to deal with it, but it's a thing. And occasionally I'll be out and about. I was in a cafe in Edinburgh a few years ago where a guy would just scream every 3 seconds, and not like horribly, but just, like that. And it was off-putting. And like, I felt really sad for the guy. Like he just wants to go, drink coffee, and now it's a thing and everybody's thinking about him. We all have to ignore him. And I have great sympathy for that dude. That being said, there's sort of two different tracks when it comes to that. Track one is the point of the film, which is it's not illegal to have a neurological condition in public, nor should it be. We should not penalize people that have this. It's not their fault. They should not be required to cloister themselves from society. That's an inhumane thing to do. I don't disagree with that. However, and I tried to come up with a better metaphor for this, but this is the best one that I have. Let's say theoretically somebody had a horrible gastrointestinal disorder that made them viciously fart. Like horrible, like people leaving the room farting.
You took my point. I was going to say explode into blood, that they exploded in blood.
Yeah, but like I'll go. The farting one seems slightly more realistic, right? Of like, that really sucks. It's not your fault that you've got this. I'm really sorry that you have it. Under those circumstances, if I were BAFTA and it were a film about a guy that has debilitating gastrointestinal disorder that makes him have horrendous farts that are deeply disturbing to everyone around him, even though it's not his fault, I think under those circumstances, I would have gone, well, we could set up like a booth, I think. We can figure out a way. We're BAFTA. We're incredibly intelligent British people. We're going to set up a booth in this thing, and we're going to have a separate air filter thing, and we're going to even acknowledge him and say, we're so glad that he's here. We've done our best to honor you, and at the same time to minimize the friction that goes on with the condition that you have, but we're so glad you're here. I think they could have done something like that. I also wonder how close the microphones were to the dude, because I can hear it, and I know how mics work. If I'm using this mic on a stage, the mic I'm using right now, if I use this mic on a stage in a big auditorium and a guy at the back yells, you're not going to hear it. When you hear live comedy shows, sometimes they'll apologize, like if it's on a podcast where they're like, we forgot to bring the mics for the audience sound, so it's going to sound like the guy's not doing very well. Everybody's laughing. You just can't hear it. So like that makes me wonder too of like, did they drop the ball? Did they like, I would have at the very least set up at the very back. And then maybe it was just, there would have been a moment where the hosts had a really weird expression and we didn't quite know what it was. And then they'd be able to talk about it. But I think they could have handled it. I would have set up a booth of some kind. I would have set up an opera box and then had it, played it in, and everybody could have gestured to him and everybody applauded, and then it wouldn't have bothered anybody. That seems to me like you could have handled this in a way that would have been good for him and good for everybody else.
We finally found it, guys. We found the breaking point of intersectionality. This was it. This was what we have, because there are two groups and that by attention and headlines, black art has seen a gigantic surge in attention over the last 10 years. It is something that more black actors have been in mainstream roles. You've seen more black stories that have been told. And in many ways, it has been a tremendous boon, but we have seen that on the rise. We have also seen a rise in people who consider themselves disabled. Now, there's a whole controversy within exactly how that happens and what that means for society. But there's no doubt by the numbers, there are many, many, many more people who consider themselves disabled than used to. Tourette's is indeed a disability. And yet, when we see a big award a multi-nominated and awarded movie like Sinners up against a guy who has a Tourette's disability and he says something awful, what has happened is not understanding, because they understand each other to be intersectionally aligned communities that deserve to stand shoulder to shoulder. Instead, you saw that, wait a minute, this ruined a moment. Sinners, Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan deserve this moment on the BAFTA stage to be honored. And what happened dishonored them. And that was the commentary coming out of the NAACP Awards. I do think that there is a reality that we have understood, and that is what I think both of you guys are getting. Either there needed to be more of a preparation from the producers, especially from the broadcasters, or you got to understand that you can't put the Tourette's guy that close to everything. And that there is going to have to be, for presentational purposes, like many decisions are made for a television show that aren't quote unquote fair or nice. You know, seat fillers often look really good. They're good looking people because they are aesthetically pleasing when you pan around the crowd versus other people. That would have been an aesthetic decision that was made to present the austere BAFTAs presentation. I think it did say a little something about our culture, though. It said a little something about where our patience is for something like this, and when we do have patience for it. Because I don't think that there was a lot of patience shown for this Tourette's guy. I mean, SNL had a whole bit about like, oh, every maligned, canceled person over the last 10 years doing a PSA saying that they had Tourette's, like J.K. Rowling and Bill Cosby and Louis C.K. and stuff like that. And Tourette's was a joke. It was a joke. It was an excuse because, you know, the joke is that guy actually just really wanted to say the N-word to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. And I don't know. I don't know exactly what it says about the baseline idea of disability, or that there is a line for which you can have sympathy for being disabled. Just don't dishonor, black cinema. I don't know. But I think we saw something. We saw a fracture there. We saw a moment where it wasn't kumbaya. It was anger.
But it also wasn't a dishonoring of black cinema. Like, this is also where I think we've got some people being overly offended by a thing that had not, like, it was an unfortunate word that came out of his mouth, but it was not something that he could control. So I think by, like, I don't know, I think what it might speak to with our culture is that some of us are just mean, shitty people, including some people on SNL who made a bigger deal out of this in a mean-spirited way than it had to be. Like, there was an intentional misunderstanding of what that situation was that I think speaks negatively.
Did you see the sketch, or are you just hearing what I'm
just hearing what you're saying, okay. But I'm also not at all fucking surprised that they did that.
Yeah, they've gotten some shit for it, but
good.
I do think that the baseline idea is that, hey, Michael B. Jordan shouldn't have the N-word screamed at him at an award show where he's at the peak of his powers.
He shouldn't, but I also think that because like when you looked at what Michael B. Jordan and the other host,
Delroy Lindo.
Thank you. Yeah. When they talked about what they were upset about, they were upset at BAFTA, that like no one talked to them before or after, specifically after. So it's like they were put in a shitty situation where they were the faces of how to deal in that moment, in a moment that they were not prepared for. So that was really unfair to them. But again, it wasn't the Tourette's guy that caused that. It wasn't even the N-word that caused that. It was BAFTA putting them in this position as speakers without being warned that was going to be a possibility, and having that, like, you know, I think both you and Andrew have pointed out that maybe the seating assignment wasn't the best, because if he had been in the back and you really couldn't hear it, if the speakers couldn't hear it and if the mics couldn't hear it, then that wouldn't have been such a moment. So I actually feel really bad for the speakers. That ruined their moment, but it also ruined the whole reason that Davidson was there, which was to honor him as well. So it's like, it ruined a lot of people's moments to honor their work.
It was out of sympathy for him and his story, this Tourette's guy and his story, that they put him where they did, right? Like this was out of an honoring and a normalization that, hey, he should not be forced to, be a leper. He should not be forced to be in a separate room. He should not be forced to be in the back. He should be front and center like anybody else. If it was a documentary about bicycle makers, the bicycle makers would be there. So that's where he needs to be. Like, I think that all of this was good-hearted, and we get what we get.
See,
wait, so am I the one that's going evil conspiracy theory here?
Like, I'm from Los Angeles. I feel like there's a very good chance that he was set up to be the punchline from the very beginning by someone who decided those seat assignments, because this was so predictable. So I would love to, say like, oh, it's just a lot of like good-hearted people making a mistake. When it comes to BAFTA, I can't give them the benefit of that doubt.
British people, let's not trust them.
Yeah,
right?
Justin, I like that finally you are the optimist in human nature. And on this one, Jen and I are playing.
I am not an optimist here. I'm just saying that this is the exact kind of clusterfuck that comes out of super good-hearted liberal thinking of intersectionality, that this is going to be a win for everybody. Oh my God, how many underrepresented groups are going to have their moment in the sun at our BAFTAs? Sinners, one battle after another. And this Tourette's documentary, how many people are going to see themselves in the stage that wouldn't otherwise be? And then all of a sudden the Tourette's guy screams the N-word at Michael B. Jordan. It's like, oh no, we've made a terrible mistake because we had an inability to think 2 steps ahead beyond the idea that everything was going to be sunshine and rainbows.
It's just so predictable. Like, I feel like if you were doing production and if you were thinking of Davidson at all, you could see the high likelihood that he was going to be somehow humiliated in that moment. So I want to believe that, but I'm too cynical about the production value of what went down and the fact that like it's gone so viral. And so
you think this is a good thing for the BAFTAs, or they thought it was going to be a good thing?
I think they thought they were going to get some kind of viral moment. Maybe not this racially charged, but they were hoping for a motherfucker to drop in the middle of it and we could all get a big ha-ha out of it. I think that was something that was predictable. I don't think that they wanted the N-word yelled at black people, but I think the fact that we're talking about BAFTAs, I think there's some people at the higher level of that organization that don't entirely hate it.
I mean, we're talking about British people here, though. Like, they don't.
Don't make this racist with me either. Like I said, I've never heard of BAFTA. I don't care about their awards, but I know that when it comes to getting eyeballs on your award show, when it's viral, it's good. There's no such thing as bad press, and this is the first time.
They are austere, though. They like the BAFTAs in general. Like the British people are like, no, this is their big moment. This is they're stuffy. They're not quite as reality TV car crash as America is.
I have no reason to. I know nothing about them. You're just saying that like British people are stuffy and therefore they would never want their clips to go viral.
The BAFTAs are stuffy. Heaton, you fucking know the Brits. Stick up for me.
Yeah, I think a PR person that wants to get a lot of eyeballs trumps British staid stuff. Also, like, I don't know, as stodgy as the British people are, didn't their prince just diddle a 16-year-old or something? I don't know. Like, I'm
no,
like,
he gave state secrets. He didn't diddle a 16-year-old.
My bad. Yeah, okay, that is very.
And he's the artist formerly known as Prince. Please.
Okay, how about this? What are the consequences for BAFTA fucking up like this? So far, it seems like everybody's heard of BAFTA. That seems to be the bad. Like, is anybody talking about not doing it next year? Is anybody talking about boycotting the awards?
Effects.
Like
Look,
what?
I mean, they're going to give awards. They're dependent for their television broadcast that Hollywood stars come out and be at their award ceremony for their TV presentation. But there's no necessity for television and movie stars to go out there and do it if it becomes a liability.
If you're a television show, you're absolutely going to show it next year because who knows what might happen. And I don't think anybody's going to not go. Like maybe those two guys that had the N-word shouted at him won't, but I think everybody else is going to go, well, I'm up for an award. I can't not be here. So no, I think I like.
No, yeah, British people are going to go. I'm talking about like Hollywood stars, like real stars, not like
I don't think there's any way that any Hollywood star is going to say no because of this.
To have sophisticated British people tell them how wonderful they are, yeah, they're going to go. I think this works out very well for them. I like maybe they didn't plan it that way, but they just get a ton of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. All right. Well, look at that. I stuck up for you, British people. See? Who hates the Europeans
this
now?
Isn't a judgment on British people.
You said that they're just like they're slimy fucking attention merchants. That
I said the British, they're just like us.
No, you said they were worse. I heard you. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Rise up, England, and fucking dunk on Jen and Heaton. I'm here for you. Wrapped in the Union Jack. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com where you send your emails. A man of culture writes, I was chuckling to myself when you asked Jen if she knew what yaoi was, but I'm a bit disappointed in your, as in me, description, which I think was more a description of shipping, maybe with a sort of yaoi flavor to it. The people involved that are likely fans of yaoi content. To be clear, yaoi is a Japanese artistic genre, comics, manga, art, anime that centers around gay men, specifically as created by women for a female audience, and is usually characterized by lithe, effeminate male characters, often with large hands for some reason, and a heavy focus on relationships. Yaoi tends to shy away from depicting full nudity or graphic sex, so it can be anywhere from a fairly safe for work comic to softcore porn, with a few exceptions that go further. These aren't really rules per se, but what they separate yaoi from is bara, which is another Japanese art genre focused on gay men, but is usually created by men for a male audience. Bara typically has very muscular, manly men, which put a lot of focus on graphic sexual content. A large portion of bara content is hardcore pornography, though, like with yaoi, there are no set rules. And just to round out the topic, yuri, which is pretty much any homosexual female content, whether SFW, softcore, or hardcore pornographic content. Just so we're now all clear. I apologize.
Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear it over the sound of my virginity growing back. What did you say?
Yes, I will retain none of this information.
This is big business with the women. Yaoi, it's huge. They love these live twinks with their big hands rubbing on each other.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's like a trend. There was a piece that just ran like a week ago about it.
Sure.
Let's talk about Tony Gonzalez. Writes, I'm extremely confused by Jen's commentary on the Gonzalez Avila story. How exactly is the husband, Adrian Avalos, to quote Jen, a piece of shit when he didn't cheat or apparently do anything to cause his now deceased wife to cheat, thus irreparably harming their marriage? As I see it, there are two likely situations. Regina entered willingly into an affair with a married man, or Representative Gonzalez pressured her into the affair. If it's the first case, I totally understand publicly shaming Rebecca. She should be shamed. If it's the second case, Representative Gonzalez's misdeeds should be known by everyone on his staff so they can make the informed decision on whether or not to continue in his employment. I fail to see moral culpability for Adrian in either situation. Is there something I'm missing here that changes the moral calculus, or is it just vibes? I'd love to be proven wrong here, but it seems like Jen is attacking the only innocent person in this tawdry and tragic affair.
Okay, let me try and put this a different way than I did last time. These two people, how do you keep saying the I thought it was Aviles, but it's not. How do you say their last name?
I don't know.
Okay, so we're all guessing. This is a couple that had been together for over 2 decades. My husband and I have been together for over 2 decades. And we actually had a conversation about this. And the conversation was, is there any scenario in which I could do something in our personal life in which you would try to ruin my career? And there isn't. Unless Joe was a danger to himself or someone in his office, if he cheated on me with his boss, there is absolutely no scenario in which I email everyone in his office to make sure that they're aware of it. When you go down the rabbit hole of their relationship, you find out that this affair happened for like 2 or 3 weeks. There's also, your assumption that this husband didn't do anything to cause his wife to want to cheat. Like, you have no idea. In 20 years of a marriage, like, you have no idea if she was feeling neglected or whatever was going on there. You have no idea what the background of was that led her to want to get closer to her boss. But after 20 years of being together, she cheats on him for 2 or 3 weeks. He told her that he didn't want her to keep working in the office. She felt like she wanted to continue to serve her district. And so then he outed her in an attempt to get her to quit her job. He was trying to ruin her career. That is not an innocent thing to do. And I also find it very interesting that I've had a few conversations about this because I'm, in Texas. But the people that have very strongly been like, she should be shamed, she deserved it, revenge is fair in love or whatever. None of the people that have taken that stance with me have as healthy and happy a relationship as I do. When I look at what I would do with my husband if he cheated on me, I wouldn't try and ruin his whole life because I love him. And even if he made a mistake, even if he made it with another woman, I still love him. And so when I look at this situation, I do not see her husband as innocent because he went on a revenge tour and tried to take down her career. And then as you watch her life spiral, it was all connected to him. He took the child away. He took her career away. It was a vengeful thing that he did. And so I know that he's on this tour now because he loves speaking about this, trying to say that, he did this for his wife, and it was all about the boss was picking on his staffer and was like, the husband chose to take revenge upon her and try and ruin her career. That's not innocent, and that's why I call him a piece of shit, because it's not something that my husband and I would ever do to each other, no matter what mistake we made in our personal life.
My only thing that I would question you on is there's no doubt that you and your husband, Joe, have a solid relationship. Personally, I hope I have a solid relationship with my wife.
I think you guys do.
I don't know what happens behind closed doors of other people's relationships that I would consider less stable. And I therefore would feel very queasy about making broad moral judgments.
No, let me be clear about this. I'm going to say there's been 3 people that have said this. Not a single one of them is even in a relationship. So I'm not making judgments.
And I would say I
think it's fair to go full revenge. So if your wife,
I don't know everything.
You would out her and try and get her fired.
I don't know everything that went on. And so what I would say is, boy, that's messy. And I would leave the facts where they are. I would not feel comfortable in making a moral judgment about. Here's who I feel comfortable about making a moral judgment about: Tony Gonzalez. It seems very clear that Tony Gonzalez initiated this affair with his staffer. He held his position over her, and then made emotional entreaties and sexual entreaties to an employee. That's against the rules. I feel like I know enough that I think Tony Gonzalez is a bad person. Beyond that, why she would be interested in cheating, how long she cheated, how that relationship ended, what her relationship with her husband was before, what it was during, what it was after, what the relationship with the kid is, whether or not anybody was stable or unstable and all of that. I have no idea. I have no clue. I don't deny your logic. I don't deny that what you are saying is, if you look at it from that perspective, you can come to that conclusion. I'm just saying from my point of view, I wouldn't feel comfortable drawing a line with anybody but Tony Gonzalez. So I would not put a moral judgment on her, and I wouldn't put a moral judgment on him, on the husband.
I want to rewind this to why I brought up the husband to begin with. And it was because the press has made it sound like Tony Gonzalez had an affair. She set herself on fire. That there was no other role. It was just the two of them. She set herself on fire because of the affair. The husband, the fact that he left her, that she lost her kid, that she lost her job, all that other nuance is being taken out of this. But then when I found out the details and found out that that husband told everyone in her office what happened, I am willing to make a moral judgment on that and say that is not an innocent person in this situation. I think that is vindictive and mean and vengeful. And I think there is something in a certain strain of people when it comes to relationships where, because it is a romantic relationship, there are people who think that it is okay to go full revenge in response to cheating. I am not one of those people. And I think that it's a sick and toxic thing in our society. And the way that I've seen it defended, I think that's something that has disturbed me in the past few weeks, because it's like, yeah, I'm very disturbed by the way people think that because you've decided to commit to someone for a while, that you now have a right to ruin their whole lives because your feelings got hurt. I don't believe that's true, and I think that's what the husband did.
Do we know that it's revenge? Like I don't know all the details in this. But
I don't think we know for sure. I think that's a plausible.
Sure looks like it to me.
That is a plausible way to say it, but I don't think we know for sure. We don't know if he talked to his wife and said, we both agree that everybody in the office should know.
That's not what it's.
I don't know. I mean, like I could see a situation of I don't know the details of any of this. I've had friends that have been cheated on, where their group friends knew about it and never told anybody, and they really wish that it had been made public for their benefit. Now, this isn't that same kind of situation, but I can see a situation where, like, the guy was like, you should know your boss's fucking staffers and having affairs. And it was more like, I could see a situation where he's kind of warning them. And then I don't know. I am the person in our group here who's not in a happy relationship. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. If I got cheated on, I would like to think that I would not vindictively try to ruin the life of the person who cheated on me. I could see myself in a moment of heartbreak talking about it publicly. I could totally see myself saying, yes, my wife Linda cheated on me, and letting him know. I don't know. I wouldn't blame him for that. And
this guy wanted her to quit, and when she wouldn't, he went and made sure that she would be ostracized by everyone in the office. It's vindictive. It's vindictive.
According to some of the reporting, she had already been ostracized and sidelined and given a raise because this had broken contain and the husband found out about it. Look, I understand your judgment that on the husband. I don't feel comfortable leveling that kind of judgment on him myself.
That's fine. I just don't think the portrayal of him as totally innocent is totally fair. I think he played a role.
And I will do this by saying you both have very healthy relationships. Justin, I trust Ashley implicitly because I've tried to fuck her 7-8 times now. And she has always, I want to say this, always rebuffed me. And not even a second of contemplating, I have to say, the pretty good offers that I made that involved some really high quality hotels. She's always turned me down. Jen, when I fucked Joe, he felt so bad about it afterwards. You could tell that he was paralyzed by guilt when I banged your husband.
And also, I don't want to make it sound like I'm, judging people that aren't in relationships. I just noticed the pattern that the people that were really into the idea that revenge is fair, I don't think that's a healthy stance. And I don't know. You're not if someone's not in a relationship, that's fine. I'm not saying that you're someone who would be vengeful, but there was a pattern there. I think if you go into a relationship thinking that you own that person, and if they, decide to get closer to someone else, therefore you think it's fair to take revenge. I think that's an unhealthy way of looking at a relationship.
I think anytime that you were wanting to derive enjoyment in the suffering of someone else, that's probably not coming from a good place.
That's the thing. I don't know for sure that we are there with this particular case. I'll also say this. There's a lot of ugly shit that happens when people suffer infidelity. There's a lot of ugly shit. There's a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings that come out when people do this. And whether or not they are permanent, whether or not they are toxic, whether or not they're something that you wish you could take back, they often do exist. The only reason why we know this is because she killed herself. And beyond that, the only reason why we know this because she killed herself was because she lit herself on fire and then was talking about it to the officers that were responding. So it's there's a lot of unique things that happened that are making us put a lot of this stuff under the microscope, because now we are in a world where we are judging these state of facts, which I think are probably extraordinarily common. Now, does it mean that people were on their best behavior, or they were perfect, or they liked it, or they were unrepentant, or they regret it? I don't know. I would suspect there's probably a lot more of a complicated situation if we were to really get in the center of it. So there we go. All right. GunTube Enjoyer writes, part of the story that really doesn't get enough attention is Tony Gonzalez's contender in the primary. A marginal loss in 2024 didn't dissuade Brandon Herrera, also known as the AK guy, from running in 2026. I used to watch his YouTube videos during the pandemic when I was younger. He made his name as a producer of AK-47s and got big online through his Darwin Award series, where he reacted and reviewed videos of people losing their ability to procreate with firearm mishaps. Big on GunTube back in the day, he made his stake in pro-2A and broadly libertarian principles. I haven't watched much of him since 2021, so he's probably changed a bit. He spoke about the ATF and their hatred of dogs, Claymore Roombas, and people who wear Hawaiian shirts, the latter not in a positive light. It was a shock to hear his name in the episode this week, but boy, is he an odd guy. And he is about to be a member of the House of Representatives, for the record.
Just another Looney Tune in the Republican Party.
Finally, Olympic Split Spirit writes, count the rings. I was fortunate enough to be at the opening ceremonies and speed skating events this year. Heaven is run by the Brits with an Italian chef. Hell is run by the Italians with a British chef. Wow, were the logistics bad. After waiting 90 minutes in line for food at the opening ceremonies, they ran out with 2 people in front of me. The stadium holds 70,000 people. And finally, ladies to the front writes, we can probably attribute the U.S. women's hockey team's success with the increase of quality of the women's game overall to the fact that the owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers has for the past 3 years run a women's hockey league. The PWHL, now in its 3rd season, has just seen 2 expansion teams in Seattle and neighboring Vancouver. Their graphics game is on point. See the Montreal Victoires jerseys. At the time of writing, Thursday, January 26th, the Montreal team will be playing the New York Sirens. The majority of the U.S. team, which is not playing college women's hockey, are PWHL members. They even did gonzo promotions for the league on air and in the commentary. As a ground floor fan, it's very fun to watch. The men's game is very different from the women's, and the fledgling league doesn't pay as well. But hey, it's great that you can go see a hockey game for less than $100 on a date night. Who would have thought that I'd be paying to see women's hockey at Madison Square Garden? The professionalization of women's hockey will lead to continued U.S. dominance at the Olympics, and for that, we can be grateful. And I
do the women punch each other in the head as much as the dudes do?
I don't know. I will have the rare email to an email to answer that question as to whether or not there is the same instance of fighting with the women as there are with the men.
All right.
My guess is no, but I'm also an ally.
Yeah, I'm curious.
You know, in the same way that
out of each other, ladies.
In the same way that I think that British producers are not inoculated to being producers any more than Americans are, I'd like to think that their women are just as violent. That the women the women performing hockey are just as violent as men. I think they could rise to the occasion and beat the fuck out of each other.
I would think so too, but
I believe it. I believe it. All right, on PX3 this week we have 2. I'm a regular political orphanage. I got 2 people that wrote books on this week. One of them, False Fronts, about executive orders and why they are not all that they are cracked up to be from the executive branch. And 2, Jennifer Doliak, writing about the science of second chances. We have a great conversation about criminal justice and her book all about the what we need to do to give the right incentives to people to commit less crime. It is that, and I did a whole thing on Iran. Doing a whole thing on. I am now officially putting America on wave watch for the Democrats for the midterms. There's a lot of signs that I am seeing that are very, very good for the Democrats, and the tale that I can tell you is about 2 women forever fated by viral video to be linked together on some level, now soon to be both private citizens because they're not going to have jobs in Congress, Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They both are on the outs, and yet one is behaving and one very much is not. What does that say about the coalitional health of either party? I will tell you on Friday's edition of PX3. Jen, what's sizzling on the dish?
So I just put out an episode that summarizes everything that went down in Congress in January. It's a relatively short episode, but they did fund 3 sections of the government. So I read those laws. We have some new laws. And then we also If you're curious, if you want to look into a crystal ball about the war powers resolutions, what they'll probably look like when it comes to Iran, check out the January episode, because this is when we saw what they did with Venezuela. I expect it to look very, very similar. So yeah, check that out if you're curious.
Mr. Andrew Heaton.
We are talking about undeclared wars in the United States. I got interested just in the basic question of why did we quit declaring war? Last time we declared war was on Hungary in 1942, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania. And then we quit declaring war. Why is that? So I got interested in that, and then more specifically on what is the legal obligation of presidents in a war situation. We go into detail on the War Powers Act, talking about Nixon 1973. I even get into some fun history involving the Ludlow Amendment. So if you want to learn about war and the history of war, that's on the Political Orphanage this week.
There we go. Till next time. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editors, Will Saddleberg. For Justin Robert Young, Jen Briney, and Andrew Heaton, we're not wrong. The BAFTAs are.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.